I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are doing a deep dive into happiness. What is happiness? How do you find it? How do you define it? Well, the woman I'm about to talk to, Anthea Devito, has answered those questions and thought about them long and hard. She has detailed them in a wonderful autobiography called The Elusive Butterfly of Happiness. Anthea, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. Thank you.
My pleasure. Glad to have you here. Let's start out with the beginning. I know what your book means with the elusive butterfly of happiness, but why don't you explain it to our viewers?
Well, I believe that butterflies and happiness are the same. They're both beautiful and very hard to catch and very hard to hold on to. I believe they're elusive because they're flitting in and out of your life, sometimes seemingly beyond your control. And happiness is something that's very hard to maintain and hold on to. You've only just got to listen to the news to lose that happy feeling with all the negative things on the news, or drive in peak hour traffic. So I've written about my search for happiness and my ways of creating happiness. And that's what the elusive butterfly of happiness is about.
I
But
think for
it's
all of
basically,
us, it's a little more or less elusive. People want to be happy. At times they're happy in their lives, at times they're unhappy in their lives. I guess what matters is if over the long term you have more ups than downs, correct?
correct, absolutely.
So tell me,
Yes.
you grew up and you kind of felt like your mom didn't love you from reading your book. That was your
Yes.
feeling, and you also feel that your child could have great impact on your life, as do a lot of psychologists such as Sigmund Freud, as you mentioned in your book. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with your mom, how it troubled you, and how you were able to come to terms with those issues.
Well, I felt that she rejected me at birth because I was apparently very much like my father's mother,
Mm.
and she didn't like my father's mother. So I was the replica of someone who she really didn't like. And I just wanted her to love me my whole childhood, my whole life, really. And she wouldn't. And I felt that that really impacted on my ability to have happiness as a child and as a teenager. But once I became an adult, then I had to take control of my life and make my own happiness. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the case for all of us. We are dealt a set of cards when we're born and when we're growing up. And then when we come of age, it's up to us to play those cards the best way we possibly can. And I think you've done that. I mean, I think from reading your book, you're more happy than unhappy. So it's no longer completely elusive to you, right?
I think it's still elusive, but you have to purposely create happiness in your life, like bring humor into your life, and exercise, which releases endorphins, which are the body's natural antidepressant. You have to actually create happiness and be mindful and focus on the good and focus on the positive, and just let the negative go, so that you find more happiness and more ups and downs.
Absolutely. I often tell people when a negative thought comes into their head, they just need to change the channel. Don't dwell on it, don't think about it, unless it's a pressing issue, of course. Just focus on what's good. There's so much good around us. We have to choose our focus, I feel. Now, you've had quite an interesting life. You've had a couple of different careers. You've worked as a registered nurse. And tell me, what was your experience like working as a nurse?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Being able to provide care for others and do things for others, and to bring them happiness, or to bring them whatever they needed or wanted to in way of health. I actually loved nursing, and I had many different jobs in many different places, which gave me a variety of work within nursing, from a pharmaceutical company to a hospital to aged care. And so I had a lot of variety, and I absolutely loved it. I loved operating theatres to start with. I really enjoyed that.
And I think you say in your book that you've realized as life goes on that part of happiness is connection. And I imagine being a nurse, you became connected to your patients, and that brings you happiness, knowing you were bringing them comfort and relief from suffering, right?
Yes, connection is so important. Connection to nature, connection to the community, connection to people around you. I find that connection is a central core in happiness. And nursing actually brought me into contact with so many people, other professionals, patients, people in the community, their relatives. It just was so connected with life, really. I found that nursing and beauty therapy were quite the opposite. In nursing, I was looking after the whole person. And in beauty therapy, I was looking after the outer 16th of an inch. And they kind of brought balance to each other doing both.
Yeah. The beauty that lies within us is sometimes greater than the beauty that is at 1/16th of an inch, as you say, correct?
Yes, yes.
You're a lucky lady. You've got quite a large extended family. You start out with a story about you beginning to write your book, and you're quizzed by, I believe, your grandchildren, right? About
Yes,
you're going to write your story, Grandma, and they've got the McDonald's ready to go and ready to eat. I
yeah.
find as I get older, my children are grown now, but I find being around the next generation of kids, like my great nieces, are such a joy. Nothing brings me more happiness than seeing little children at this stage of my life.
Yes, I find that too. I find they keep you young and keep you active and keep you interested, and they're always doing something. And the world is so different today than what it was when I was little. And I find I love my family
Mm,
very much.
yeah, and
Yes,
that's part of the connection you're talking about. To be connected to your kids and your grandkids and future generations is so vital.
yes, that's right. That connection is part of happiness.
Mhm.
Part of it. Yes.
What are the other parts of happiness that you explore in your book?
Feeling happy in your own skin. Um, I'm just trying to think actually. The other parts of happiness would be,
Well, let's take
uh,
that, feeling happy in your own skin, feeling comfortable in your own skin, learning to accept yourself as you are. I think that is a key component to happiness, because if you're not happy with yourself, if you're too critical of your appearance, say, or if you're too judgmental of yourself, if you're too hard on yourself, you're not going to be able to get beyond that. So learning to
that's
accept
right.
yourself as you are is so important.
It is absolutely, to accept yourself, your past, your present, and your possible future, to accept your life the way it is. Like, I had a lot of trauma and a lot of tragedy, but I've accepted it. It may not have been fair, it may not have been just or right, but I've accepted it that it happened, and in acceptance there's happiness.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I would imagine writing this book has brought you some joy, getting feedback from others. And I think this is a good time to mention that Sweet Spire Literature Management helped bring you here today. And we're grateful to them for having such a wonderful guest to share with us her work, this book, The Elusive Butterfly of Happiness. So I'm a little hat tip now to the Sweet Spire Literature Management and the good team that they have there. Tell me a little bit about the writing experience and how that became a self-exploration for you.
Well, it did. Initially, I was motivated to write the book, to write my life story for my son and grandchildren, but it was actually an overwhelming compulsion to write the book, to get all this trauma out of me and to put it on paper. And it was so cathartic. It left me, and it's gone now, and it's in the book, and it's out in the universe, and that has made me a lot happier to have actually got it out of me and got it onto paper, the whole writing experience was just amazing. It took me several years to write the book, and there were a lot of junctures along the way where I was stuck with the trauma. I found it very difficult to write about, but I actually persevered and I got it all out of me. And after several years, I finished writing the book.
I think a lot of psychologists will tell you that writing is therapeutic, perhaps, especially if you have suffered traumas, that putting it down on paper sometimes makes them seem like they're less important, that it is not defining of you, and that it's something once shared is no longer a secret that you harbor inside you.
That's right. It's no longer a secret inside of me. I've released it to the world and it's now in the book and it's gone from me. And I felt it just so therapeutic writing the book. At the end of 7 years, I was actually a lot happier than what I was when I started, amazingly enough. It was just the whole process of writing it was just incredible. I really recommend it to anyone who's gone through difficult times or had a difficult life. Look, write a book
Or
about it.
I would recommend read yours. I mean, I think people can learn from your journey. And I think that's the beauty of literature, is that you read your story and then you find commonalities between my life, for example, and your life, for example, and we realize that, hey, these are the kinds of struggles that many of us deal with. We've had conflict with our parents, we have conflicts at work, we might even have conflicts with our children, but that's part of life. I heard a clergyman one time say, and it always stuck with me, if you accept that life is hard, then life becomes a little bit easier.
Yes, that's right. I think that a lot of people go through struggles. A lot of people have difficult times, but it's not something we actually talk about or discuss. People prefer to talk about happier things. But I think that people do go through struggles and it is normal. It is part of life. But I think getting through the struggle and finding a way to get over it and through it and to create happiness and find happiness is the way to go.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm glad your book was cathartic. I'm glad your book was therapeutic. Again, it is called The Elusive Butterfly of Happiness. And perhaps after reading it, you'll find happiness a little less elusive. It is written by Anthea Devito, and we thank her and we thank Sweet Spire Literature Management for bringing her here today on Spotlight. Anthea, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Logan. It was a pleasure being here.
The
Thank you for
pleasure is
inviting
all
me.
mine. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.